when you're out of sync or like experiencing kind of a burnout, like how do you personally like get back into the groove and feel back to feeling like yourself?
I think it helps to understand what it is that's burning me out. And so I did have an experience last summer where I got super burnt out of podcasting. And I actually did stop podcasting for a few months. And it was the first time that I ever did that in 5 years, that I just stopped and I didn't re-release episodes. I did nothing. There was about a 3 month period from July to October last year where there were no new episodes because I just needed to recalibrate. I needed to have some time to myself and some thoughts to myself that were just for me, not for the internet. And it was really important to fill my cup in that way. Sometimes it could be other things that are burning me out. Maybe I'm going a little too hard on the exercise and I need to scale back on that. But I think for anybody who is navigating burnout, it's really important to understand what is it that is burning you out and how can you implement solutions so that you don't get burned out again. Because it's great if you take a
Yeah.
break from what's burning you out. And then as soon as you start again, you're just going to get burned out again. So figuring out the why, like what is the problem that needs to be solved and looking for a solution, I think is most helpful.
Yeah, and speaking of that, like being someone that's like you tend to have a lot of an online presence. Like, how do you kind of take care of yourself in that space? Because I feel like there's a lot of sometimes you don't always want to be super vulnerable. You kind of want to, like you're saying, there's things that don't need to be on the internet about you, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't think everything, even your family life or whatever, like there's things that you want to show the world. Like, how do you kind of take care of yourself being like an online person?
Yeah, my method for that has always been to go deep, but not wide. So there are a few kind of buckets or, pillars, if we want to use content marketer speak, that I will go all in about and I will share in great detail, whether that is about the workouts that I'm doing or the recipes I'm eating or, beauty things that I'm sharing. And I will go all in and I will share all about that. There are other buckets of my life, details about my family or details about my personal life or specific details about my finances. We don't ever go into those. We just don't. Like that's just like not on the table for the broader internet to hear about. And that just is what it is. And, my audience understands those boundaries. And because I'm able to share so much and go so deep in what I do consent to sharing, they almost don't notice that I don't share the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been what's been helpful for me.
Yeah, I think it was in one of your podcasts. I think it was with Jazz Turner. You were talking about. I want to make sure it's right. You said you teach people how to treat you, right? How do you kind of build those like boundaries on for people that kind of to what we were talking about?
Yeah, that's a Maya Angelou quote, I believe, that is something that my mom has always said to me from a very young age. So, like, what you allow, how you communicate with people, what your boundaries are, that is all information that teaches people how to treat you. And it's hard because it can be hard to set boundaries. It's hard to speak up for yourself. And I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily always the best at it. I think it's a little bit easier to set boundaries online than it is in real life
Mm.
sometimes. Um, but that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about you are the sun. Like you are the one who lives with the consequences of people disrespecting your boundaries. You are the one who lives with the consequences of overextending yourself. So if you want a different result, you're going to have to approach things differently. And that's something that I like to remind myself of when I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, that's well said. And speaking like continuing on the like the path of balance, I always kind of think of balance in like a four-part thing. And I saw that you all kind of talk about too, like the holistic side. So I think of balance in terms of like mind, body, soul, and heart. Like how am I kind of taking care of those things each day that kind of build up to it? Like how do you kind of like satisfy each of those areas? Do you think about that too in that space, or how do you think about it in satisfying those four areas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the belief, and this is maybe my own unique definition of balance, that we're never going to be 100% in every area. And I
No.
think that when people try, that is when they say things like balance doesn't exist, I can't do this, I can't do that. I think that we all go through seasons of life where different things are our focus. We may have a season where it is like all hands on deck about family, or maybe you're having a season where you have some lofty career goals and work is a high priority to you. Or maybe you have a season where you're really leaning into wellness. So that means if you are super heavily leaning into one of those things, let's say maybe work is like a really high priority. You're having a season of life where there's a lot of demands of work and you have a lot of professional goals that you want to reach. you're probably not going to be in the best shape of your life during that season. Like you're probably not then going to have the time, energy, and capacity to spend hours upon hours at the gym. That doesn't mean that you neglect your health and that you don't work out at all. It means that you do just enough to feel okay and that your priority is the main thing. And then in the next season, maybe you prioritize wellness a little bit more. And at work, maybe you're not reaching for the stars, but you're like getting done what you need to get done. And you are constantly in this dance of figuring out what your priorities are and how everything else can kind of maintain in the meantime.
Yeah, I like that. And I always think about it like from like a train analogy. Like you got those four parts, and like anytime I feel like I'm off, I'm like, okay, am I in a brain funk? Am I not working out enough? Is it more like, emotional, or is it like just I've been neglecting my soul care? Like there's things that when I look at that, that's kind of where I start from, like, and then make sure if those are out of whack, that I'm fixing that. So I like the way you're talking about it too. Like some things just true are sometimes things just become priority, and it just is what it is. You gotta take
Yeah,
care of it.
exactly.
Can you talk? I think also part of it's like eliminating what's not working. What is something you spent like a lot of time growing up or doing, or even now that you're like, hey, just avoid this. Like I think balance also like sometimes just avoiding stuff.
I mean, I don't know.
Eliminate.
It's hard because sometimes we can't always eliminate things, or sometimes, like, some things that can be really hard. Maybe your relationships with people are really draining, but you can't. I think sometimes people are a little too quick to cut people off or to just try to eliminate things. And sometimes you just can't. You just kind of got to do the best you can to allocate your energy where it's going to go. And some things aren't ideal. And, you just got to do the best you can. But I think sometimes it's hard to just eliminate things altogether.
Yeah. I also want to go into a little bit of like health and fitness because I know that's a big part of your thing about about make sure you have daily movement and practices. Like, how do you set up your fitness plans or goals? I think actually in a recent interview you talked about just making it like your identity. But like, what are some good rules of thumb for like sustaining a fitness routine for you?
For sure. Yeah. So that was in my most recent episode, How to Get Everything You Want. I talked about embodying the identity. So a question that I get a lot from people is like, I'm so unmotivated. How do I stick to a workout routine? How do I get up in the morning and work out even though I don't want to? And I'm like, you have to embody the identity of a person who works out. What you do or don't want to do is kind of irrelevant. Like it's just who you are. And that's been something that I've been able to adopt because I've been consistently exercising so long. For me, exercise doesn't feel any different than brushing my teeth in the morning or putting my contacts in. Like in my brain, it's literally the same thing because I have adopted the identity of I am a person who is active. I am a person who prioritizes fitness, and it's just what I do. Now, do I go do something crazy every day where I'm just passed out in a pool of sweat? No. Sometimes it's just a walk. Sometimes it's just stretching for a little while. Sometimes it's, going to a yoga class and literally doing nothing but laying on my mat the whole time. But the point is like showing up and being a person who shows up and doing the best you can with what you have. So I think that that is really important. And if you're telling yourself, I'm so unmotivated, I can't do it, I'm so lazy, then that's who you're going to be. And so you got to learn how to flip that script. The other thing is you got to find a way to incorporate movement into your life so that it is not necessarily easy, but it is easy for you to maintain the habit. So for a really long time, I had long commutes and I would get up and I would go to the gym before work, and things that I would do is like I would pack my gym bag so that it was ready to go. I would set out my workout clothes the night before so that I would wake up and it was easy for me to just get in them and get out the door. Anything that you can do to eliminate friction is really important. So if you find that there are certain obstacles you have to working out, whether that's time, whether that's this, whether that's that, you got to sit down, you got to come up with a solution to get through those obstacles so that you can get moving.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookumapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.